The Principle of Utility by Jeremy Bentham. Act utilitarianism is the next moral theory we'll be covering. It has three main features as stated in the italicized introduction to Bentham. First, act utilitarianism has a consequentialist structure. That is, the rightness of an action depends on the net value of the consequences associated with that action. Second, act utilitarianism states that what has intrinsic positive value is happiness, and what has negative intrinsic value is unhappiness. Third, act utilitarianism is impartialist, in that the resulting level of happiness and unhappiness for everyone affected is what determines the rightness or wrongness of an action. This is unlike ethical egoism, where only the happiness or consequences of yourself matter. Now that we know just a bit about the main features of act utilitarianism, let's look at its core statement. The principle of utility. An action is right if and only if it would, if performed, produce as high a balance of pleasure or reduction of pain as would any alternative action open to the agent in the circumstances in question. So, the way to figure out what is morally right using act utilitarianism is to do a calculation. For example, if you were deciding whether to give to charity, you would figure out how much pleasure your $5 could bring you, say if you bought a drink at Starbucks, as compared to how much pleasure your $5 could bring someone in need who might use it to buy the only food they got that day. So, act utilitarianism requires that happiness and unhappiness and pain and pleasure can be quantified in such a way that we can compare amounts using the principle of utility. Notice that this is the opposite of natural law theory, which said that the basic values are incommensurable and therefore cannot be traded off in the way act utilitarianism suggests. But, for instance, how on earth are you supposed to compare the happiness of eating a cupcake against the unhappiness of being the victim of theft? That's like comparing apples and oranges. Bentham offers 6 features of pleasures and pains that can help us to quantify their values for the purposes of using the principle of utility. First, intensity of the pain or pleasure. Second, duration of the pain or pleasure. Third, certainty or uncertainty, its likelihood to occur. Propinquity or remoteness, how close it is to you in place and time. Fecundity, the chance it has of being followed by sensations of the same kind. And purity, the chance it has of not being followed by sensations of the opposite kind. Then you must consider the extent of a possible action, the number of persons to whom it extends, or in other words, who are affected by it. You must calculate the act's value for the other 6 criteria for all parties involved. This is what makes act utilitarianism an impartialist moral theory. Then and only then can you take a grand total of the pain and pleasure for everyone impartially considered and figure out ultimately what to do. That's traditional act utilitarianism in a nutshell. Bentham developed act utilitarianism in a rather simple form. As a result, it faced many objections. We'll discuss some of these on the discussion board. The next lecture will explain how Mill went on to fix some of the problems with Bentham's act utilitarianism.